What is functional grammar? The term functional indicates that the approach is concerned with meaning as opposed to formal grammar, which focuses on word classes such as nouns and verbs. Look here, the term functional indicates that the approach is concerned with meaning. The word functional grammar is basically based on what is the meaning in the text. It looks at the meaning in the text as opposed to formal grammar, which focuses on word classes such as nouns and verbs. Look, in the first point, what is the main idea? That functional grammar is that kind of grammar which looks at the text from the point of view of meaning, while formal grammar is the type of grammar which focuses on the grammatical items of grammar like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on. So see the difference between the two. Functional grammar is all about meaning. Formal grammar is all about classification and explanation of grammatical items. This is the fundamental difference between functional grammar and formal grammar. We move to the point number 2. These units of meanings are represented in various oral and written texts. Look, units of meanings here means that when we say that we study functional grammar in relation to meaning, so meaning from where? Meaning from what? So we derive meaning from texts, and there are two types of texts generally. The first type of text is oral text. Oral text means the spoken form, and then we have the written text that we write. So the texts can be divided into two parts. Texts may be oral, text may be written. You may analyze somebody speaking something, you may look at the meaning of what somebody has spoken, and sometimes you may read a paragraph and you look at the meaning what somebody has written about. So the meaning can be explained in two different ways. One way at looking at the meaning is what somebody has spoken, another way to derive meaning is to what somebody has written. That is why point number 2 is all about we are represented in various oral and written texts. Oral means spoken form. Point number 3, functional grammar is interested to analyze language at the text level rather than sentences. Look here, functional grammar does not talk about only one sentence, does not talk only about one single word. In formal grammar, we talk about words, we talk about sentences, and we analyze how the words help in the construction of sentences. So in formal grammar, we just end up ourselves in the construction of a sentence, and we talk about just one sentence and at the level of sentence. But in functional grammar, we don't talk about one single sentence. We talk about the text level, the paragraph level, the composition level. The text may be small, the text may be long, depending upon what you are going to look at. So these are some of the important points regarding what is functional grammar. Each point is very important, so please try to understand them, memorize them, and keep them in mind. Now we move on to the next page. We continue with the same idea. What is functional grammar? Point number 4. Functional grammar is functional in 3 different but closely related senses in its interpretations. Functional grammar is functional, means it works at 3 levels, and all these 3 levels look differently, but they are very, very closely connected with each other. Number A, of texts. We look at the texts, look at the composition, look at the oral or written text. Number B, of the system. When we say system is the language. When you look at the text, spoken or written, then what comes to your mind after you look at the text? After you look at any piece of writing, then you just immediately think how this has been written, how this text has been composed. So when we think of how this has been composed, how this has been written, it means that we are talking about the system. How the system has helped in the formation and the composition of the text. Then we have the elements of linguistic structures. We analyze texts, that's okay. Then we also look at the system, the language that helps in the construction of the texts, in the making of the texts, in the composition of the texts. And then we also analyze different linguistic structures. How beautiful are the structures in the text and what implications they have at the level of the meanings. So this is point number 4 about what is functional grammar. So far we have talked about, discussed point number 1, 2, 3 and 4. We move on to the next page. Text. Let me just go back if it is okay. That's okay. Then we have point. So we have already done what is functional grammar. Functional grammar contains only 4 points. All of them are important. Please keep them in mind. Now we move on to the next. Text. What is text? As I told you previously, text is any oral or written material. Now we are going to understand text in a more comprehensive manner, in a more scientific manner, in the language of technicality. What is the text from the perspective of linguistics? Look at point number 1. When people speak or write, they produce text, and text is what listeners and readers engage with and interpret. Look here, what people speak, what people write, they produce words, they produce sentences, and a collection of words, a collection of sentences, they build up idea, and that idea can be comprehensively known as text. So I continue, and text is what listeners and readers engage with and interpret. When somebody is speaking, I am listening. So what I am listening? I am basically listening the text spoken by someone. So I can listen. When I listen somebody is speaking, then I can interpret the meaning. Likewise, when I read any text, any piece of writing, then I will interpret the idea, then I will come to understand, and then I will know the meaning behind it. So text is what people speak or write. That is to say, text may be in the oral form or in the written form. When it is in the oral form, we as listeners try to listen, understand and interpret. When it is in the written form, we as readers try to read them, understand them and interpret. So this is all about point number 1. Go to the point number 2. Some more information about text. The term text refers to any instance. Instance means example. Again, the term text refers to any instance of language in any medium that makes sense to someone who knows the language. Look here, this point number 2 is more comprehensive, has a wider meaning. That text refers to any instance of language, any piece of writing in any language, in any medium, that doesn't matter. And what text means, that it must make sense. If somebody is speaking, somebody is writing, what somebody has spoken, what somebody has written, if that meaning could be conveyed to someone, that meaning, that idea could be referred to as text. So these are 2 points here at the moment. Point number 1 and point number 2. We move on to the next page. What is text? Look here, 3 and 4. Number 3, we continue with the same. What is text? So we have some more information. We can characterize text as language functioning in context. Look, Halliday is a very famous writer. He has written a book, as I told you in the beginning of our lesson, Introduction to Functional Grammar. And he says, what is text? Text is a language functioning in context. Look here, language functioning means that language works in context. What I speak and what I write, unless or until you know the context, you know the background, you cannot understand the meaning. So what is text? So text is a language functioning. It works as the functioning of the language. It helps language. How it helps language? Because it helps language to understand the meaning in context. If you don't have the background knowledge of what has been written and what has been spoken, then you cannot reach the actual meaning of the text. That is the point here, number 3. Go to the point number 4. Language is, in the first instance, a resource for making meaning. So text is a process of making meaning in context. The same idea in another set of words. The same idea is explained in another way so that you can understand better. Here, what is that? What is language? Language is a resource for making meaning. Language helps us to understand the meaning, to understand the idea, to understand the opinion. Therefore, text is a process of making meaning in context. What is text? Text is a process of making meaning. We read something, we listen to someone, and immediately we come to the conclusion that somebody has spoken this idea, somebody has written this idea. So we understand that somebody has spoken that idea or somebody has written that idea. We understand that in context. The entire context, the entire paragraph or the entire segment of what somebody has spoken helps us understand the idea behind it. So what is text? Text is a process of making meaning in context. We move on to the next. Some more points we have about text. Point number 5, you can look at. To a grammarian, text is a rich, many-faceted phenomenon that means in many different ways. It can be explored from many different points of view. As a grammarian, as a linguist, as an expert in the field of language, text has multifarious meanings. Text can be looked at from different angles, from different points of view. Somebody has spoken or somebody has written something. We can look at that piece of writing from different points of view, depending upon what context we have formulated in our mind. This is the point here. Then we have point number 6. But we can distinguish two main angles of vision. 1. Focus on the text as an object in its own right. 2. Focus on the text as an instrument for finding out about something else. Here there are 2 examples. Text can work also as an object. Text can function also as an object. At the same time, text can also be an instrument. How text could be considered as an object and how text could be considered as an instrument? When I say text could be considered as an object, we will talk about this in detail in the next page. But here briefly I would like to tell you is that, look, object means that suppose there is a book or there's a paragraph and I have read it. So when I take that paragraph out of the book and I want to analyze it, this becomes my object to analyze it. So the text becomes an object. Now when I start finding out the meaning and so on and so forth, going into details, means that the text is becoming and helping us to understand more meaning behind it. Means what? The text is acting as an instrument for us to understand, to reach the level of meaning. This is the idea here. Point number 6. We move on to the next page for better understanding. Look, as I told you, what is text as an object? Already we have understood what is text and it has some points. Now we are going to talk about text as an object. Let me read. Focusing on text as an object, a grammarian will be asking questions such as, why does the text mean what it does to me or to anyone else? Why is it valued as it is? Look, text as an object means there is a text and the text in front of your eyes works as an object. Now, as an object, the first question that should come to your mind is that, why does the text mean what it does? Every text, every oral or written piece has some meaning behind it. But what does this text mean what it does? Why does the text mean what it does? Means that it means something, but why does it mean what it wants to mean? This we will look at. To me or to anyone else, there is a text, there is a piece of writing, there is a composition. To me, it means differently. To others, it means differently. So we will look at the text as an object, that this text as an object, this text, does it mean to me in the same way does it mean to others? Number 1 point. Number 2 point, why is it valued as it is? Means why is it understood in the same manner as it is understood by others? So we have to analyze 2 aspects when we talk about text as an object. Go to the next 2.3, text as an instrument. Let me read. Focusing on text as instrument, the grammarian will be asking what the text reveals about the system of the language in which it is spoken or written. These 2 perspectives are clearly complementary. Look here, as an instrument, when we talk about text as instrument, means that the grammarian will be asking what the text reveals about the system, what the text gives more information about the system of the language, how the language has been formed, how the language has been exploited in writing the text and writing this composition. We have beautiful poetry, we have beautiful composition, how this beautiful poetry has been written, what is the beauty of the language, so on and so forth. So what the text reveals about the system of the language in which it is spoken, or written. So text as instrument means that text becomes a tool for us, helping tool for us to understand the language, to understand the system, to appreciate the beauty of the language, how it has been expressed, how it has been written. And these 2 things that is to say the system of the language, and the text as an object and the text as instrument, both are very, very complementary, closely related. They move on hand in hand at the same time. You cannot separate. Go to the next page. Text as artifact or a specimen. Let us read. The text has a different status in each case, means a different position in each case, either viewed as artifact or also viewed as a specimen, used as an example of its type for a study or investigation. Look here you have two meanings, artifact and specimen. Here the meaning is given. Artifact refers to an object made by a human being, typically one of cultural or historical interest. Texts do not just contain words. Texts themselves are cultural artifacts which convey many meanings in their own right. Look here. Here what text as artifact or a specimen? First of all, try to understand what is artifact. Artifact, as it is here given, artifact is an object made by a human being and it has a very cultural or historical interest. For example, you can say that an object of keeping your memory alive of the past. This is called artifact. Sometimes you have an object in your house which your grandfathers used and you want to keep it safe. So that object which you appreciate as a part of the memory of the past, this object could be considered as artifact. Now here we are talking about a specimen. Here means example of its kind. A specimen means that a very, very good example of its own type, its own kind. We have a lot of things, but out of a lot of things we want to study this particular type, this particular instance, this particular section, and that section, that type may become the specimen, may become the example of its own. So text as artifact or a specimen, it means that text is just not only a written piece, not only a spoken form. Text may be valued as artifact or a specimen. Text may be considered as an important piece of memory of the past, of the contemporary time, depending upon how we look at the meaning. So text is just not a spoken words and written words. Text has its own cultural or historical relation. Any word, anything that is spoken by a leader today, by a person today, may become of its own cultural and historical importance tomorrow. So text may be considered as an artifact or a specimen. It becomes very valuable, it's become very important, it becomes very precious, and we have to respect it. We move on to the next. Text as register. Let me read. Recognizing the texts for analysis of discourse or text are numerous and varied: educational, social, literary, political, legal, clinical, and so on. And in all these, the text may mean example or a specimen of a particular functional variety known as register. Look here. To analyze any text, any written or spoken material, what is more important is to recognize the contexts, is to recognize the background in which that particular piece, that particular writing has been composed for analysis of discourse or text. So before we analyze any text, here discourse or text, both are more or less having the same meaning. So when you are going to analyze the text, you are going to analyze the discourse, you must try to understand the context. Number 1 point. Number 2 point here is that the text, when you are going to analyze, may work at various levels, what we call register. Sometimes you may have educational books, educational writings. Sometimes you may have social books, social writings, literary books, literary writings, political books, political writings, legal, clinical, and so on. So we have different types of areas of knowledge, and the different types of areas of knowledge will have different types of ideas, different types of thoughts, and different way of expressing the language also. So before we try to analyze any text, we should also try to understand what kind of knowledge this particular text belongs to. What is the variety? To which field it belongs to? Does it belong to education or society or literature or politics or legal matter or scientific, and so on? This must be decided in the beginning before we start analyzing the text. If you don't know what kind of text it is, what kind of text it is, then how can you reach the right level of meaning? This is the point here. In all these, the text may mean example or a specimen of a particular functional variety known as register. So this we call register, a particular way of writing in a particular field of knowledge. This gives you the sense of register, the variety of the type of language being used in that particular field. This is known as a register. So text can also work as register, and this is very important. If you don't understand what kind of text it is, what kind of variety of writing it is, then you cannot come to the level of meaning. Sometimes there are different types of writings. By looking at the writing, by looking at the text, you can think this text, this writing is from Quran, from science, from geography, from history, from society, from education, and so on, from engineering, from medical. So knowing this variety of the text refers to what we call register in the language. So this is what about text as register. We move on to the next page, and this is away from what we have been discussing as functional grammar, what is text, and text working as object, working as instrument, then artifact, then register. Here we have two important terms, not directly related but essential to understand in the field of functional language. Point number 3, grammatics. What does it mean? It refers to science of grammar. The science of grammar is known as grammatics. Briefly, this is the meaning of this word. To add some more information, it relates to a standard usage of grammar or grammatical structure. So grammatics is first science of grammar, and it is also related to a standard usage of grammar, the formal usage of grammar and its structure in the expression of language. Go to the 4. Semiosis. It refers to making, understanding, or production of meaning. So semiosis is the science of understanding meaning. Semiosis is the science of making meaning, driving meaning. And semiosis is the science of producing meaning. Production of meaning means that production of meaning is the same as making or understanding meaning. There is a production of meaning means that you understand the text. You make the sense out of the text. That is the meaning of semiosis. These two terms are also important in the examination. You will be asked explain these two terms, so please keep them in your mind. Now questions. Type 1. Question number 1. What is functional grammar? Explain in detail. We have discussed many points. All the points are important. They are already brief, so memorize all of them, try to understand them and answer the questions. Question number 2. Explain what do you mean by text? Write in detail. So what is text? Write in detail. Just write about the texts, and it has 4 or 5 points. Question number 3. Write about text as an object. As we talked about how the text as an object could be interpreted, we have the answer. Write about that. Question number 4. Write about text as an instrument. So explain how text as an instrument can be explained. Move on to the next. Questions type 2. Question number 5. Write about text as artifact or specimen, as we talked about. Question number 6. Write about text as register. We have just finished talking about this. Question number 7. Write definitions of grammatics and semiosis. So we have, I think, 7 questions based on the discussion of this lesson 2. Please try to find the answers from the lesson we have just discussed. Try to understand them and try to enjoy the concept behind it. This is the end of our lesson 2. Hope we have understood. Best of luck and best wishes. Goodbye.